Christo-paganism. Here's the tea. People have been worshiping pagan deities alongside the Christian gods since the beginning of Christianity, maybe even longer. We're gonna hop around timelines here a bit, but let's start with ancient Rome, because that's kind of where the big Christianity boom happened, right? Now, Rome was a melting pot of all of these various cultures because it was an empire. So it's not like everyone was just practicing the Roman pagan religion. Like, no, there were so many different cultures and beliefs and things happening in the Roman Empire area. Now, to my understanding, during this time, Judaism wasn't frowned upon, but like among the Roman majority, it wasn't like celebrated either. It was just tolerated, like, yeah, all right, I got that. And the reason why I bring up Judaism is because obviously Christianity is an offshoot of Judaism. But like I said, Rome was this cultural melting pot, and what happens when a bunch of cultures are all together for a long time is a little thing called syncretism, which is basically when one culture, I guess you could say subconsciously, for lack of better words, starts to take on the practices of other cultures because you're next to each other. This does not happen overnight. It happens over the course of a very long time. But all of that said, to condense this within a couple of minutes, the ancient Romans worshipped the Christian god alongside their pagan gods. They called him Iao, I think is how it would have been pronounced. But what about thou shalt have no other gods above me? That message was grouped at a very specific people for a very specific reason. That reason being that this was right after the Exodus. They had just gotten out of Egypt, and they were, for a time, set up right next to a Canaanite settlement. And it was believed, at least at times, the Canaanites performed human sacrifices to their deities. So with thou shalt have no other gods above me, as well as don't seek out soothsayers and mediums and psychics and all these things that people try to use against witchcraft, right? Which doesn't make sense when you know that Judaism has its own forms of mysticism, divination, what have you. So why would God say that? What he was saying was, hey, don't do the shit that the people next door are doing. Because if you end up taking on those customs and y'all end up unaliving each other like they do, then everything that I did to get you out of Egypt was for nothing. So just stay here with me and I will keep you safe, my beautiful, dumb humans. Now, obviously, we know that that did not completely happen. There was some syncretism between the ancient Hebrews or ancient Israelites and the Canaanites, because that's where we get Asherah. Judaism today recognizes a divine feminine of God. They refer to her as the Shekinah. Now, different sects or denominations, I'm still not sure what the right word is, of Judaism might have different views on that. But to my understanding, they don't view her as a separate being or a goddess, just as an aspect of God. Like, they still believe in one God, but that there is, you know, a feminine aspect that they simply refer to as the Shekinah. So today, I don't think they would necessarily see her as Asherah or Sophia, but a lot of Christian witches, Christo-pagans, do kind of utilize that goddess worship. I could go into that more too in another, like Asherah and Sophia specifically. But there's a divine feminine aspect regardless, and if they believe in that today, they probably believed in that thousands of years ago. So basically, the ancient Canaanites, their top goddess was named Atheritu. Very well could be pronouncing that wrong. And eventually, due to syncretism, again, not overnight, over the course of a very long time, a lot of the traits and attributes and maybe even some of the like root word letter things, I don't know, within the name Atheritu became integrated within this concept of the divine feminine, which would then become Asherah. I hope this is coherent. So all of that to say, people have been putting the Christian and/or / Jewish God alongside pagan gods for a very long time. Now here's some other sources so you know I'm not talking out of my ass. Obviously there's the Christo-Pagan book that I showed at the beginning. I've never personally read this, but I've heard that there are prayers and invocations to both Christian and Norse deities in this book. This Bible. This is the Old Testament, and in the margins, there's annotations to give you context as to what the hell is going on, and this is where it explains that, hey, God was referring to the Canaanite practices. And there's this one. This one, please, God, take what resonates and leave what doesn't. This book is not perfect. There's a lot of personal bias from the authors in this book, but it is a decent introduction to Asherah if you are completely unfamiliar with her. Just, take what resonates and leave what doesn't. If you're farther along in your Christian witchcraft or Christo-Pagan journey, this book is pretty vanilla, but if you are brand spanking new, it's great. This was actually the first Christian witchcraft book I ever read. Bean, my friends wrote this book. Baneful Christian magic, how to curse a bitch with the Bible. This one, very academic, very thick, very informative, painfully boring. Like if you're into hardcore academia, then I made it that far. Want to know how Jesus is viewed in other religions and cultures around the world? Bang, boom. Lots of Christian mystics and magicians are referenced in this book. This book, not quite done with it yet, but it gives a bit more information on how Athira became Asherah and just Canaanite practices in general. But this was another take what resonates and leave what doesn't. There was a couple things in here that I was like, I don't know about that, but still informative. My friend wrote this book too. And finally, the Jant. Annotations and essays in the back. I highly recommend reading the ones on magic and the divine council. We hope this was helpful.